Welcome to the Edge of Eternities rules video. My name is Nelson.
And I'm Serge.
We're here to introduce and explain the new mechanics in this set.
We want to thank our friends at Judge Foundry for helping to sponsor this rules video. If you're interested in becoming a judge in the United States or Canada, head to judgefoundry.org to sign up.
New subtype alert! Spacecraft and planets are brand new card subtypes making their debut in Edge of Eternities. These cards both have the Station keyword ability, which allows you to tap creatures to put charge counters on them. These charge counters represent adding to the spaceship's crew or building up the planet's infrastructure. Spacecraft and planets all have some number of abilities that need to be unlocked. To unlock an ability, tap untapped creatures and use their power to give that many charge counters to the permanent. Once the Station card has enough charge counters, it either becomes a creature with the new listed power and toughness, or it becomes an upgraded version of its previous self. Planets work the same way as spacecraft, but they do not become creatures. Planet and spacecraft are subtypes with no special meaning. They don't grant any intrinsic abilities, but other cards may care about you controlling them. The Station keyword means tap another untapped creature you control, put a number of charge counters on this permanent equal to the tapped creature's power. Activate only as a sorcery. Use the tapped creature's power as the ability resolves to determine how many charge counters to put on the station. If that creature is no longer on the battlefield, use its power as it last existed on the battlefield. If the tapped creature has negative power, no charge counters are put onto or removed from the station. If a Station card has a power and toughness box printed in its text box, it's not a creature unless it has the appropriate number of charge counters on it. That card also doesn't have that power and toughness in any zone other than the battlefield. If an effect causes a Station to become a creature by some means other than having the appropriate number of charge counters on it, it won't use any power and toughness values printed in its text box. Instead, it will use whatever base power and toughness was set by the effect. If you make a copy of a Station, your copy will enter as the base copy of the Station with no charge counters on it. You will still need to charge up the copy starting from 0 even if you had unlocked abilities on the original version. A Station's unlocked abilities are based on the number of charge counters on that permanent. This means that if the number of charge counters changes, either up or down, its abilities change accordingly. The same is true for determining whether or not that permanent is a creature.
Warp is a new combat-related ability that lets your creature get in a quick appearance before zipping back away. You may cast a permanent for its warp cost rather than its mana cost. If you do, that permanent is exiled at the beginning of the next end step, and the card's owner may cast it from exile on a future turn. You can only pay the warp cost when casting this from your hand. If you pay a warp cost rather than a mana cost, you're still casting the spell. It goes on the stack and can be responded to and countered. If you pay the warp cost to cast a spell, that permanent will be exiled only if it's still on the battlefield when the trigger resolves. If it goes to another zone before then, it will stay where it is. If it ends up in exile some other way, its owner won't be able to cast it on a future turn. Despite feeling like it should, please note that Warp does not give the creature haste. Void is a new ability word that represents if a non-land permanent left the battlefield or if a spell was warped this turn. Warped, in this case, meaning a spell being cast for its warp cost. If a player casts a spell for its warp cost, but that spell is countered or otherwise fails to resolve, that spell was still warped, so Void abilities will be active this turn. Some Void abilities are triggered abilities with intervening if clauses. If Void isn't active by the time the ability would trigger, it won't trigger at all.
Joining the ranks of treasure, food, and clues, we've got a brand new artifact token, and it's a good one. Introducing the Lander token. Lander token reads, 2, tap, sacrifice this token, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Please note, some spells and abilities that create Lander tokens require targets. If each target chosen is an illegal target as that spell or ability tries to resolve, it won't resolve and the Lander token won't be created.
One of the greatest mechanics ever printed is back. That's right, I'm talking about landfall. A landfall ability triggers whenever a land you control enters for any reason. It triggers whenever you play a land, as well as whenever a spell or ability puts a land onto the battlefield under your control. Landfall doesn't trigger if a permanent already on the battlefield somehow becomes a land. Whenever a land you control enters, each landfall ability of permanents you control will trigger. You can put them on the stack in any order you want.
That's it for the rules. Thanks again to Judge Foundry for sponsoring this video.
Thanks for watching.